So thank you so much, Hira, for coming on the podcast. I am so excited to talk to you. I think we haven't talked we talked really early on in my business journey, didn't we? And probably
Absolutely, absolutely. It's such a pleasure to be here, Michelle. And I feel like I've known you since years.
I know.
Yeah. So honestly, and I know we've been trying to do this since a long time. So this is amazing. I'm very excited about this. I think your book is brilliant. So very happy to be here.
Well, I think your books are brilliant too.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you. I've got one here. The other one's in the cabinet.
That's
It's
fine.
like it's in there somewhere. No, it is.
Don't worry. They're there in the background.
Yes, they are. They are. So, first question. Have you ever been pressured into that good girl mold, that box that says this is the way that you should behave?
Oh my God. Absolutely. Yes. I have felt this pressure both personally and professionally. I think growing up, like many women can relate to, I was surrounded by messages about how girls should behave, like sitting properly, speaking softly, and avoid being seen as wild or opinionated or outspoken. I actually even had a distant elderly aunt
Mm.
explicitly tell me that girls shouldn't laugh loudly.
Oh.
And and I literally, and I'm not kidding, I held on to that belief for a very long time. I used to shy away from, cameras. I never used to show my teeth. I actually still don't, maybe, but yeah, it was very much there. I think there was also this cultural expectation to marry at the right age and marry the right person, which created a constant subtle pressure. I think in our society, and again, I have to give full credit to my parents. They did fully support my education and my academic aspirations, but I could sense sometimes they're quite concerned that too much focus on studies or career success might make it harder for me to find the right partner.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was there. And I used to think, Michelle, that this was an issue in the East, but I've come to realize that these challenges are universal. I mean, some struggles may be more profound in certain areas, but social conditioning that holds women back is just a global experience. I think I discussed this in my first book about how cultural expectations are remarkably similar worldwide. But I think now I've come to realize after doing research, lots of research and talking to women from different areas that this conditioning, this good
Mm.
girl conditioning crosses borders,
Mm-hmm.
and it influences how women are perceived and also limits. We develop so many internal barriers as a result of this, right? And then professionally, of course, there's always been this thing about, how. Oh, I have to tell you this. When I was writing my second book,
Mm-hmm.
her allies, I think I felt it even more intently, the personal pressure, from family and otherwise, because I often used to encounter disagreements with, again, not immediate family members, but distant family members about issues like victim blaming,
Mm-hmm.
and especially with the older generation who may sometimes be less attuned to evolving values. And it took every ounce of my patience to stand my ground respectfully, but it wasn't
Mm.
easy. It wasn't easy at all. And I don't know if I've shared this with you, but when I launched Her Allies, it was a particularly isolating experience because I was challenging a lot of norms,
Mm.
and there was backlash, of course. And professionally, of course, there's always been this pressure to conform, to be seen as likable, not overtly assertive, to
Mm.
avoid coming across as disagreeable. So I think and I think women usually face this tightrope bias, right? Where there's a narrow range of acceptable behavior, or
Mm-hmm.
there's this prove it again bias, which means that, in order to be equally competent, women need to perform better than men. So all of this, I think, does very strongly push us towards the good girl conditioning or the good girl box. Sorry, that was a very
Mm.
long answer.
No, it's a lifetime of work though,
Yes.
recognizing that and kind of almost sort of disentangling from it and knowing that some of it you have to sort of kind of play along with as well, just to be able to exist, because there are so many fights to be had, but you have to choose your battles. as it were,
Absolutely.
as well.
Yes, yes, yes. No, I couldn't agree more. You have to choose your battles. I say this all the time. I think especially as women, and even though it might seem like, oh, but why do we have to choose the battles? We just have to for our own sanity, for our own mental health.
Yes. Yes, a perpetual state of rage all the time is not
Yes.
exactly going to like make you feel loved and cherished like the miracle that you are, really.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm sorry. Was that my something beeping in the background? Hopefully that wasn't caught up
Oh,
in the audio, but that's fine. Yeah.
I don't know. James can remove it if there is, but I didn't hear anything. Okay, so how do you deal with that? Obviously, choosing our battles is one way. Um, how do you specifically deal with all of the pushback that you're not conforming to your gender stereotype and all the other stereotypes that are kind of pushed on you?
Honestly, I just think we just have to unashamedly own our space, and we need to reject these outdated expectations, and we have to find solidarity with others, especially women like us or even men like us, allies, right? And go in spaces where our voices are valued as they are. We don't have to change anything. We don't have to tone ourselves down. We don't have to temper our confidence. um I always recommend women that you should have a person board of directors, with coaches, mentors, allies, advocates, so many different people who you can lean back on and
Hmm.
who will be in your corner. Because I think in the leadership journey, navigating this journey can be quite isolating. It can be very lonely. So
Yeah.
just having those people around us, surrounding ourselves with people who will have our back is so, so important. And then, uh, and I think this is something I would say, Michelle, and you might agree with that. It does this is something which comes with age too. I think when you're
Mm.
younger, you're more into people pleasing. And
Hmm.
I'd say I'm a recovering people pleaser. I always say this.
Me too.
And I still tend to perhaps do certain bits and bobs here and there, not completely like, no, I'm just going to do what's right for me. Um, but I think, yeah, I think it's something which happens with time. Yeah. And also one thing is important, and I think we're seeing this is how we raise our girls.
Hmm.
We've always been raised to put our heads down, not to be too loud, don't boast, don't show off. And I think we just need to teach our girls better, because boys are generally encouraged to assert their confidence, whereas girls are asked to put their heads down and play by the rules. And that's exactly what they do, which later impacts their self confidence when they transition into the professional life. So it's just a carry forward, literally.
Mm. I
And I
know.
think we just need to teach our girls and our boys better, honestly.
Yeah. It's like we're recording this literally the week after the US election. So as you can imagine, emotions and disappointments are
There's
very
a
running
very
high.
absolutely yes.
And and we have seen a lot of that backlash
Mm,
towards um women in particular this last week. So I've been a ball of absolute rage.
mm.
But we need to harness that, don't we? We need
We
to
do need
take
to.
that energy and transform it into something good, something collaborative, something that's going to make the world a better place, because there are things and people and systems that are trying to take us back to the dark ages for some reason, and it's like
Absolutely.
we're not going there. We're not going there.
Absolutely not. We're not. And I think that's the reason why it's so important to be able to have these conversations. And I completely respect the idea of blocking people, just to be clear, and not let people play havoc with your sanity and with your mental health. Because sometimes I've noticed some people are just not redeemable. I mean, you'll try and reason out with them and they won't listen.
No.
And there's absolutely no point in investing your time and energy there. So you need to conserve your time and energy for something much more important. But for the rest of the people, I feel like we need to harness this anger, because anger on its own is not going to get us anywhere, right? We need to be
No.
able to channel it into a direction where we're able to frame conversations where people listen. And perhaps, and I spend so much time, Michelle, writing my posts on LinkedIn. And in fact, I have a post coming up on just this in the next few days. I take so much time to write my posts, and not just because I'm afraid to offend, because I only want people to be influenced. It's just if one person can listen and self-reflect, and that has happened in the past few months.
Yeah.
It's not just about women's issue, but issues that I care about. So, for example, Palestine as well. I mean, when you have those conversations with people, with those one-to-one conversations, and you're able to make them reflect on what they've written, it's life-changing, right? So I think you need that. It's hard, honestly. It's very hard. There are days when people will say something really preposterous, and you're like, God, I need to shut them out from my life. But I guess you just need to hold on. And especially the kind of space that we're in, Michelle, I think it's just about, like you said, channeling that anger in a direction where we could make a positive impact.
Yeah. And we talked about this before in terms of people are watching if they're not even, if they're not feeling brave enough to post a comment on your post or like it, they're still watching, and you're still influencing people who may not have taken that perspective, because the places we get news are very one-sided. And which newspaper, podcasts, news, TV. People still watch the news on the telly. I think they do.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
biased, and it's
But even the TV channels are so biased. I mean, if there's certain channels if you're more inclined to watching, then you will just get one side of the story. And that's been with all social media platforms. Like, it's Islamophobia Awareness Month. In fact, I'm going to be speaking about media bias against Muslim women too in one of the posts this week or next week. I think this bias is so prevalent. It's just everywhere. And if we don't see what we're consuming, we have a huge risk of just being shifted to one side or the other rather than holding balanced perspectives about certain situations.
Yeah. I always watch France 24 because I find that quite balanced.
Oh, yes.
As a
right. Yes,
as a news channel. So I'm like, okay, so this is saying that, this is saying that. So what are France 24 saying? They just seem to take a more kind of nuanced approach to things. They're probably not perfect, but yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm going to have, I think I've seen certain news from them too. I'm definitely going to have a listen and see.
But yes, it's like sample a range, because then you're less likely to be influenced by sort of the agenda
What you're
of
being
the people
shown.
that own
Yes.
them.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So I think we've probably answered this question already, but being a leader, being a female leader, being a Muslim female leader, does that come with a certain pressure to behave in a certain way?
So I'll tell you what, I wrote this post about few weeks ago because sometimes when I'm trying to call out oppression within the communities, right? If I'm standing up for women in Iran and Afghanistan, what I find challenging is to do it in a way which does not attract Islamophobic comments, because I don't want to reinforce that belief. Oh, but you know what? Muslim women are subjugated and oppressed. And what I find personally very frustrating, Michelle, is that where is that solidarity when the oppression comes from external communities, right? What about women, for example, Palestine, Sudan, and Yemen, all different countries, Congo, like, who are going through a really bad time, but people wouldn't really bat an eye. In fact, in the media bias, you know, there's been, anyways, I'll write about it in the LinkedIn post so you'll know more. But I think as a Muslim woman, for me, what is challenging is to be able to call out Islamophobia, also to be able to call out when things are not going well within the community. And I always do. I always have a very balanced approach. I can't be hypocritical and say, well, I stand up for all women, when I only selectively stand up for women that whose values and ideas align with me, and not for others who are not similar to me. So for me, I think that's the challenge. But as a leader, generally, as a female leader, you would also relate that it comes with a lot of pressure, right? There is this tightrope bias, which I talked about. You need to be really very carefully juggling everything. There's just a very narrow set of behaviors that are acceptable to the society, and to stay within those behaviors. And then, of course, if you're a woman of color, or if you have different sort of intersectional identities, Muslim women, immigrant, working mom, all of that, Asian, brown women, or a black woman, or a disabled woman, or a trans woman, there's so many different layers to that. Then just added burden, or added amplified marginalization, which you need to contend with. And I think the challenge is you don't know what you're being discriminated against. Is it my gender? Is it my skin color? Is it my race? Is it my faith? Is it the
Yeah.
fact that I'm an immigrant? I wasn't born here. So yeah, there are a lot of things to consider. I think it's just sad that, whereas women generally are held to very high standards of competence, when you are a woman with intersectional identities, I think that those levels just sort of multiply.
Yep. As we've seen in America this last week, a woman has to be
Absolutely.
beyond perfect
To be able
before,
to,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. This is how it is. And look, it's like we're in the 21st century. I mean,
It's
we're
like
still
2024.
we're still contending with this kind of outdated, stereotypical expectations. It's ridiculous. It's so sad. And don't you dare tell me, I tell people that equality has gone too far.
Oh,
Because there's so much we still need to fight for. How has equality gone too far when we're still fighting for basic rights?
no, I know. And we see around the world rights being taken from women. And it's like, oh, well, there's another right gone from a woman and not a peep from the world, just, yeah. I was saying the Taliban sent a congratulations to Donald Trump this week. And I'm like,
Oh, did they?
yeah, it's like, well, if the Taliban think that you're onto something good, then you need to really have a look at yourself. Bless you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's I was just when he was winning all the seats, I was just looking at like all the country leaders who were like, I guess for
Oh,
them it's like they
yeah.
probably need to maintain that political lines. But yes, you're right. It's like when so many problematic people are saying that you're great and you're amazing, then I guess that just becomes something to worry about even more.
Yeah. It's yeah. Don't I don't think I'll ever understand, but that's okay because we don't need to put our energy into understanding. We just need to put our energy into fighting hate with love and hope and joy, heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid, sure. Yes, I mean, to a certain point, I am a fan of grieving and processing that grieving. I
Mm,
never tell people that, oh, jump with joy, just be fun, happy and content and
no.
empathetic all the time, because that's not normal. I think you need to take your time to grieve, process the emotions, feel bad, feel upset, cry about it. That's all perfectly normal. But I
Mhm.
feel like once that's done, when you're over the grieving period, I think that's when we need to get up and start thinking, okay, how do I approach this? How do I move forward? Because obviously, I mean, we have to, live through the next 4 years, right? So how are we going to do it in a way which serves the communities that we care about? We can't
Mm,
just, and I think, I don't know, sometimes I feel it's exhausting, but then it's also a privilege
mm,
that, you don't have I guess you don't have that freedom to stay in a certain space for a long time. So I can't be grieving on for a long time and not get out of it, because I have to get up and start doing something about this, right? So
yeah.
the luxury and the privilege to be able to create an impact, that very much lies, the responsibility that lies with us. I mean, that's something which I think many of us do take it seriously. And sometimes it's tiring, I wouldn't lie, because you feel
No.
like, gosh, I'm going through so many personal challenges myself. How do I get out and deal with what the world is throwing at me? But I guess that's where privilege comes in.
Mm,
That's where we need to recognize that, look, I am in a position to say something, others are not. So let's just get
yeah.
up and do something about it.
Yeah. So we can because we were able to, but I would if I was saying the same things living in America, I would think again. I'd probably still say them and suffer the consequences, but I would
Totally.
be a little bit more worried about um
the
impact.
consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Michelle, I think the whole year I've seen friends who have been so afraid to speak up because of the consequences. And that's why I don't blame and shame people when they're not able to, because I feel
Mm.
like, you know, I can, but that doesn't mean that everybody else can. So I think
And yeah, it doesn't mean they have to as well. It's okay for
absolutely.
them just to,
Yeah, and then
privately. Yeah.
private and there's so many different ways to advocate. You don't, it doesn't have to be public advocacy. I mean, public advocacy is one way, yes, but then there's so many different quieter, silent ways where you can privately still do something about this,
Mm.
and contribute. It doesn't have to be loud, doesn't have to be vocal, doesn't have to be something which everybody's able to see.
No, it's so true. And I think, the platforms that you and I have, we can use that for good. And obviously we don't always get it right ourselves. And sometimes it's
Absolutely, we don't. We don't.
sometimes yeah.
We make mistakes all the time, and I think that's the whole thing. We're on a learning and evolving journey. We need to, I think, give some credit to ourselves too, right? Because
Mm,
this is not something we've been doing all our lives. We
no.
can commit an occasional faux pas, and that's fine. People shouldn't be like, "What have you done? Why have you done this?" And again, if it's about yes, making mistakes, but then acknowledging the responsibility that I've done something wrong, and then moving on from then. It's what you do after you have made that mistake that's more
Mm,
important than the actual mistake itself, because we're human. We will say things which a lot of people may not like, or which may not be okay, and that's fine too.
yeah, absolutely. And so this is one of the reasons why I literally I send men mostly to go and find your book.
Oh,
So
that's
the
really
Her
kind.
Allies, because it's just so it's so simple, but it's logical, it's rational, it's compassionate, and it's this like just follow this.
Oh, thank you. I know you've often tagged me, and James is also very kindly, and I always feel very, very flattered and very honored. I think when somebody recommends a book for an author, as you know, is just something
Mm,
like, oh my God, this is so reassuring. But yeah, honestly, I wanted to write a book that addresses this gap in resources, and I wanted to invite men in a compassionate way. It's safe space where you're not blaming, shaming, having condescending attitudes towards allies. So that was really, really important to me. And I
mm,
also felt that it was important. I mean, there are many, many amazing male allies. We all know them. I have so
mm,
many in my own team who are doing exceptional work in this regard. But I also felt that I really needed a book. I really needed to write a book from a woman's perspective, right? Because I fully understand and appreciate male only spaces, but it's crucial to keep women and other marginalized groups, those that we aspire to be allies for,
mm-hmm,
at the center of the conversation, because you can't exclude these voices, right? You are making decisions on their behalf, and you can't assume what's best for them. So true allyship means you have to listen to them and include them, and that's the reason why I felt that from a women's perspective, this book was
mm.
needed. I mean, a lot of people like telling Asian brown Muslim immigrant women telling men what to do.
Like
But
shut up
yeah,
and listen, because she makes lots of sense.
thank you. No, I just felt like this is something I needed to do, and from a woman's perspective, it was important. So yeah,
Mm.
and thank you so much for recommending the book to everyone. I know you had great reviews of our first book as well, so I'm very, very grateful for you.
No, I'm so grateful for you too.
Support.
But yeah, sometimes I do want to hit them with your book, but I lovingly tell them to go and find it. Just
Yeah,
whack
yeah.
them round
But
the
I
head.
think it's also important for them to book, the male allies. I will always recommend them to read, both my books and books like yours, Good Girl
Mm,
Deprogramming, because I think they need to be able to understand the challenges women experience and what is the social conditioning which has led to what they think is lack of confidence. For sometimes I know for me, it's a lot of times in my head, it's just, this respect or deference. It's not really lack of confidence. So
mm.
I think men really need to understand this good girl deprogramming as much as they need to understand how to be allies to be able to show up and support.
Yeah, yeah. And I love it when a man has read the book or seen one of my like articles and they come back and they're like, yes, I totally get it. And I feel like I've got like a very lovely male sort of cheerleading squad, if I can call them
Oh,
that.
that's amazing.
Um,
That's amazing. And I think, yeah, I've often seen your posts on allyship, and they're amazing too. And I think everybody follow Michelle and follow me.
I follow you. They're already on my podcast listening, so I think everybody should go and follow you as well.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much. Okay, so this is going to be a quick one. If you could implement one global policy to promote workplace equity, what would it be?
Oh my God, this is so hard for a woman who's written books and who loves writing and
I
speaking.
know.
Just asking her to talk about one thing which is going to promote workplace equity. I was a huge fan of paternity leaves, and I thought that's it. But then I decided that you have all kinds of people working in the organization. You just don't
Mm,
have parents working, so that couldn't be it. I personally feel that it's very important. If it was one measure, then I would say some sort of accountability framework.
mm,
This policy would require organizations to adopt transparent, measurable, standards across hiring, pay, advancement, work culture, tailored to ensure that accessibility is at every level, whether it's when you're paying them, whether when you're hiring them, it's representation, it's even events. So like every literally aspect of the organization culture that you need to challenge and
mm,
have accountability for, because I feel like people, even allyship, I say that what's in it for me. A lot of people will be driven to um, this because of personal reasons, but then let's be honest, we're all busy people. So if the
mm,
organization doesn't have some strong accountability in terms of how people are being hired, rewarded, promoted, celebrated, acknowledged, I think everything else becomes irrelevant. So
yeah.
accountability framework is something which I would say is something I would personally go for. I mean, even though there's so many.
Thank you. You know what's really interesting? It's like we know there's so much research backing up that diverse organizations do better.
Yeah.
It's just like we know this information, but so few are actually doing something about it
I
because
know,
it's
absolutely. I just I feel like, yeah, that's something which we really need to I mean, we know about it. And I think the organizations, some of the people in these organizations might be knowing this too, but I think it's just the systems are so entrenched
Mhm.
in the way they're operating. It just takes a lot of collective effort to be able to dismantle it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's just like it's obvious. This is why. So yes, this is obvious that we need more diversity in organizations at all levels, and we need to treat people fairly and make them feel that they belong and have like healthy conflict because there's nothing worse than a room full of yes people. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. But yes, if we implemented your standards, we'll get there eventually. So yes, excellent. So
Okay.
my last question, because I like to leave my listeners slash audience, watchers, whichever they're doing, with something to ponder about. So do you have a question that they can listen to and think about?
So I would say because this whole thing about women and leadership and confidence, right? The question I would ask is, I think I probably posted this bit earlier too in one of my LinkedIn posts, or maybe in a BBC interview, but I say that are we overemphasizing or even exaggerating the impact of things like imposter syndrome and confidence issues or self-esteem issues, while minimizing our own lack of efforts and questioning the inequity that holds these women back in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say just to ask yourself, is the women or the women of color or, insert any women with intersectional identity there in your team, is she actually underconfident or is she underestimated? And there's a marked difference between the two and how you approach each other. Each diagnosis would be significantly different and could greatly impact her way to the top.
Wow, that is a mind-blowing question, and I love it. So thank you so much. thank you so much for coming on. And I could have talked to you for about another 6 weeks, but I'll have you back if that's okay. We can.
I would love to be back. I love speaking to you because always, for me, I'm personally, I like to interject humor a lot in when I'm speaking. You can't tell from my writing because I'm a very serious writer. People think I'm a very serious person. I'm not. I love that. So I really like your way of asking questions and just generally. I think I've really known you since so many years, and I love and admire what you do. So it's always a pleasure to do anything with you. So I'd love to
Oh, thank you.
collaborate.
Awesome, awesome. Well, if all the getting in touch with Hira, all of the books, etc., will be in the show notes, and you can find her. She's very active on LinkedIn and other platforms as well. So go and find her, everybody, because she's definitely one to watch and keep an eye on because she talks so much sense.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. Lovely to be here.
Thank you.